Okay.
You're like, all right, let's go.
I'm always like that.
How about the best time you ever had at Studio 54?
I mean, the fact that I'm alive is the miracle of the
Oh, come on, really?
Oh, yeah, all of us.
Quaaludes were your drug of choice.
The greatest drug ever invented. I'd always wanted to start a fourth network.
For a long time, yeah.
Yeah. And Rupert said, yeah, I'll bet the company.
And you're thinking what at the time?
I'm thinking I'm dealing with a crazy person.
What do you think would have to happen for you to be able to buy it?
Opportunity.
How would you alter it?
Look, feel, and see. Every way.
What do you think when you see the amount spent on the Melania doc?
How do you go against the government of the United States when you know that that government is gonna deny you being able to be in business?
At 11 years old, when you write the Beverly Hills Library, what happens?
I look at books on homosexuality, and in every single one of them, it was repeatedly nailed for being a mental illness.
Explain what you did after you took an AIDS test.
I called my doctor and I said, you have to destroy this.
What makes you happy?
What makes me happy?
What got you into sailing in the first place?
Well, I have this weird affinity for water. I don't know where it comes from, but it could come from the fact that my birth sign is Aquarius, which is water. But I have always been drawn to water. In it, on it. If I'm too far away from water at any time, it's like I really feel it, actually, feel it. So it's not something I can do anything other than describe as just a need. So.
And what do you mean, feel it, if you're not around it?
If I'm not around water for a while, I need to be around it. And I can't explain it other than it draws me, and it's always drawn me. Now, I grew up in California, which is close to the water, and so I've always had water relatively close to me, and I know it when it's not. So, what do you do on water? I mean, of the many things you do, one of them is sail. And so I learned to sail, but once I started, I mean, as they say, a duck to water. I sail to water. I love it, and it's.
What do you think you enjoy about it?
The freedom, the idea of being able to organize kind of your process, your carriage, where the wind cuts at a certain angle, and you have to organize it so that you cut against that wind in the perfect way to propel you forward. So it's got to do with everything that is, I don't know, I wouldn't call it essence, but moving forward is kind of the thing I've always had to do. And sailing is just another application of it.
I mean, now you have a crew, but there was a time where you sailed from Florida to the Chesapeake Bay, right?
I can't sail our sailboat. It's just too big, and they wouldn't let me near it. It's not true. I do sail it, but you're sailing a boat of size, it's like you've got 12 crew who are actually doing all the hard stuff, and you're at the helm shouting, go this, do that, punching buttons, whatever. It's not like being in a laser boat. You know what a laser is? Laser is a tiny sailboat, one-person sailboat that you're just in charge of everything.
And is that when you went from Florida to Chesapeake Bay?
No. I mean, I went to Florida, from Florida to Chesapeake Bay on a power boat, not a sailboat.
Got it, okay. And you did that solo?
I did that, actually, yes. I ended up pushing it to the point that I bought the largest power boat that a single person could run without, by the way, the authority of a single person being able to run it, because I literally never got off that boat that my shins were not covered in blood as I was running from the bridge down to the helm or to the other parts of the boat that I had to take care of myself. And I would, I ran aground so many times. It was just like, they never should have let me do it.
One of your all-time favorite boating memories, though?
Favorite boat, I have so many boat stuff in my life. Probably it was the first time I soloed a boat to Catalina Island from Los Angeles, which is not far. It's like 20, it is, as the song said, 26 miles across the sea. Is it across the sea? Whatever that lyric is. Anyway, the first time I did that all by myself was both really scary and thrilling, because about 2/3 of the way a squall came up. And I'd not handled a power boat, I think, other than a little skiff boat, ever. And there I was in a storm, and waves probably built up to about 6-8 feet. Actually, the other thing that you've just ticked me on is, this has got a name drop in it, but Barbra Streisand and I think her boyfriend at the time, John Peters, was on my boat coming back. We'd gone to Catalina and coming back from Catalina. And it's about a 2-hour trip, 2.5-hour trip normally. But it was a hazy, mungy kind of day. And often the coastline of LA, kind of gets like faint.
Right.
And I thought I was following the direct line from Catalina to whatever, but when I got closer to it, I didn't like what I saw, but I couldn't really see very much of anything. And I turned the boat and I kept going, and I could not find the shore. And Barbara and John were sitting across from me in the cabin, and I was thinking, I'm totally lost. I can't quite admit it. What am I going to do? Say to them, she'd start screeching.
You already test your patience.
For sure. And it went on, I think it was like 3.5 hours, and every 15 minutes, Barbara would say, did we take a different route? Where are we? And I would say, oh, no, I just wanted to go over here. And she'd, no, it's like taking too long or whatever. And I literally was covered in sweat until I got the radar on and found the little entrance to Marina del Rey. And it was almost 4 hours this trip took. And she was so pissed at me. That was my other, I could, once you tick me on memories, boat stuff, I'll be here long past nightfall.
Anywhere, okay for us. Anywhere still on the wish list to go?
Yeah. I've been actually almost everywhere, but I haven't really. I've been once to the Nordics, but that was a fated trip when a fire broke out on the sailboat, and so the trip was aborted literally an hour into it. But I want to go to the Nordics. I would like that, and that's kind of the next place we'll go after we finish. Right now we're in Asia with this big boat, and yeah, that's probably one definite place I'm going.
The average amount of time you think you spend a year on the boat, and like your role in kind of creating it?
I hope it's probably 4 to 5 months. Shockingly. Oh yeah. If you leave me just be, I'll be on the boat.
Your role in kind of designing it, because I know architecture and design.
This boat took 6 years to build. And there's not a screw that I wasn't grudgingly involved with.
And I can imagine there were a lot of...
But it's so much fun. It's the design, if you like boats and stuff, it's not a thrill to actually build one, because then all sorts of stuff comes up, but the design process is joy incarnate.
And for everybody, because I read some of the stories about you and Frank Gehry when designing the office building.
That's a building, not a boat.
Yeah. Okay, so we're in Las Vegas. Obviously, this is become kind of an increasingly important part of your work. Why decide to invest here?
Well, it's really quite simple. This is actually just kind of the end of COVID. And I was worried about coming disintermediation. I saw what was happening with advertising and with media, and the looming possibilities of artificial intelligence. And when I realized, I've come to Las Vegas all my life, and I've always been kind of excited about it because it's an exciting place for a day or two, for me.
Yeah.
But I realized that no matter how anyone tried, nowhere in the world, it would not be possible to ever duplicate this place. It's just not possible. It is the capital of entertainment, adult nightlife, now family life, now sports, now every area. It is the organizing center of it. It's at such depth and breadth. And then when I found this one company, MGM, that has more than 10 resorts and has a huge slice of this market, and with hundreds of restaurants, hundreds of performance venues, more convention space than whatever, that I thought the infrastructure alone and the creativity with which they built this infrastructure was so attractive to me and interesting to me, just sheerly interesting, that one of the few places in the world, if you try and build something in New York, and I've done that a few times, or you try and build something in any urban place, you run into all sorts of issues. But in Las Vegas, if you kind of say it here, it comes out there.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated by it.
As part of preparing for this conversation, and your memoir was fantastic, by the way, which I know you've heard from countless folks, but and this could be my own ignorance, but there seems to be some level of nostalgia with some of the investments that you pursued over the years. And, I wonder, Kirk Kerkorian and the days with him way back when, if there's just any...
I was lucky enough that I got to know a lot of, quote, the old characters of show business, of the movie business certainly, and I got to know Kerkorian fairly kind of young in my career.
What about when Charlie Bluhdorn had a negotiation that he was trying to get back on track and
Bob
running
Evans'
for?
house. Yes, that's a classic, where Kirk Kerkorian was at I think the very beginning stage. So this would be in the 70s. So he had was building a big hotel in Las Vegas, and he ran out of money. And MGM, his company, was also in difficult straits at that time. And they owned a lot of theaters around the world. And so our company, Paramount and Universal, wanted to buy those theaters. And so there was this negotiation that took place at this famous Bob Evans guy house, who was an executive at Paramount.
Interesting memoir, too.
Oh, yes, fascinating. The kid stays in the picture. If you want a great laugh, riot, read that book. Yeah. Anyway, Charlie, Kirk, Lou Wasserman, who was the head of Universal.
Whose wife, Bentley, you were once arrested
this
for
is true.
taking a joyride in.
Yes, this is true. You did read the book. So Kirk Kerkorian says basically the lowball offer that these rapacious guys made, Kirk, the greatest, toughest gambler you could ever imagine, very simple man, but very strong, said, no, I'm not doing it. And they kind of harangued him, and Kirk got up and walked out of the house. And Charlie Bluhdorn, the head of Paramount Gulf and Western, the parent company of Paramount.
Massive company.
Huge conglomerate. Yeah. Ran out and literally got in front of his car as Kirk's starting to mow him down. And it's just the picture of these, at that time, these three business titans in this ridiculous situation of car moving forward, Charlie literally getting in front of it, banging on the window to get Kirk to actually accept his accelerated offer. That was a scene.
And you're a kid at the time, you had to have a massive role, even then. I want to talk to you about money. And speaking of gambling, I want to take you back to a story you tell about coin flipping.
Oh, God.
The gambling game when you were
Don't
a kid.
ever do that. I was at a friend's house in Mexico, and I was 19.
Grew up well off.
Yes, I did. But one of the guests there said, let's flip coins. We'll start at $1, and we'll just double it. I thought, well, yeah, fine. Let's see, double it. I mean, at some point, if you're just doubling a coin, it's got to come. It's got to come your way. Well, it got to 2, 4, 6, 8. It got to $32,000, and I thought, I got to stop.
And you're how old then?
19. And so I stopped. I went home, and I said to my father, I said, you have to give me this money. He said, I'm not giving you money for some card sharp, some con man who cheated you somehow, some way. And I said, well, it's a point of honor. He said, there's no honor among thieves, et cetera. And I went to my mother, and she gave me the money.
You wrote, the lack of money or the accumulation of it has never been anything but distantly vague in my mind.
Yeah, I know how that sounds, and I mean, I know that it's like, probably people skeptical about it, but it is true. And I don't know that it's true for everyone in the circumstances that I grew up in. And my circumstances were not that of my friends, who all had allowances, who all had chores and duties and things like that. So their relationship of money and accomplishment was kind of was congruent, whereas I had no chores, I had no allowance, I just got stuff whenever I needed it.
Yeah.
And so the money has always been abstract to me. It's just the way I don't think about it as an animate thing. Now, it's not that I don't like it. What a fool would I be? It's not that I didn't want to. I didn't ever want to accumulate it. It was a byproduct of whatever I did. I'm happy that it came, but it's never had any rulemaking for me. I never made a decision in my life about money, where money was the criteria for making the decision.
What do you think you learned from your parents?
Well, my parents were really nice people, decent, kind, and in their sphere of experience, thoughtful. But because they had no parenting, they had no clue how to be parents. I kind of grew up in a plush forest, like alone. Also, my older brother, was a drug addict from a very early age. And so any attention they had for parenting really wasn't parenting, but was getting him out of trouble here and there.
And I know they separated often. Like, were things bad between them?
No, they were a dysfunctional couple who certainly loved each other, but from somewhat of an organized distance. And when there wasn't enough distance, I think there was conflict and whatever. So in the early years, my early years, they would separate and come back together kind of multiple times. Once I got, though, into my 20s, so they're then in their 40s, 50s, at that point, they came together and stayed together until the end of their lives in a totally lovely couple, really wondrously, nicely dedicated. But that was later. I was kind of gone by then.
Your grandma, I believe, put your mom in an orphanage from the time she was 5 to 16 years old.
Three to 16.
What do you think happened to her there?
Well, I don't know, and it was never discussed. My mother's parents were never discussed to the degree that I had been told, and I think she was told, that her father was run over by a cable car in San Francisco in the early 20th century. Right. In fact, he had killed himself. But we didn't know that. My mother, I don't think, knew it, or she did. She never indicated it. So the experience that my mother had, I can only imagine being sent to an orphanage because your mother has married somebody who did not want children, but had plenty of resources. It wasn't like out of poverty, but put her 3-year-old in an orphanage until she was 16. It's just so extraordinary. What went on there, who knows?
To what extent, though, looking back now, do you feel like she did the best she knew how?
She did. She just didn't know how. So
yeah.
The aperture was very small. She hadn't had the experience of having a parent, really. And so she was clueless, but for sure she absolutely, she was a kind, decent woman who externally was thought to be this completely happy, vivacious, fun-loving person, but had terrible migraines and I think deep secrets. And more than did the best she could.
Elaborating kind of a comment.
What she could was just not very much.
You made a comment moments ago about allowances and curfews, and I want to read a quote you wrote in your book. I never had a curfew. My friends all had allowances and chores, but I was just given whatever money I needed, and there were never any disciplinary actions to deprive me of it if I went astray. You went on to say, I watched my friends' characters grow as their parents gave them responsibilities. I figured I wasn't worth my parents bothering with any character building. Exactly. Why was there that feeling then?
Why did I feel that way? Well, I felt that way because they were not really interested in what I was doing or what I was about. We had...
Didn't go to the high school graduation.
We had a very formal relationship. No, they didn't come to my graduation, and it would be inconceivable. Now, as crazy as this is, because of course you go to your children's graduation, but in my family, it would have been utterly crazy under the circumstances for them to come because they were just disengaged from my life as I was disengaged from theirs. Once I became, my mother definitely 0 to 3 or 4 took care of me, like a little Barbie doll, I guess, or pre-Barbie doll. But once I got actually probably walking and yapping, talking, there was no interest. So I didn't have any of those satellites in my life. So I was just on my own from a very, very early, I would say from the age of 7.
And one can only imagine the ways in which that influences a young person, but you wrote, what paralyzed me was that I didn't believe I deserved a future.
Yeah.
What do you think the genesis of that was?
That was the dysfunction of my family to a degree, and the fact that I was, even though I had friends all my life, since, probably since 5 or 6 years old, and I had orbits outside of my family that were family-like, that I kind of pretended to, I was alone, and I think probably very lonely, and seemingly very self-sufficient. My biology was very strong, and without that, I'm sure I would have collapsed at various moments.
You made a couple comments which almost seemed like contradictions. You said back then you would find a shortcut around any hard work you could do, yet you would read literally everything in sight.
Yeah. Where's the contradiction in
Well,
that?
I mean, how, like, Normally, one would think if you're a kid and trying not to do any work, then the kid's slacking kind of in all.
It's not that. I'm very superficial and very transparent. And so I always did what I wanted to do. I wanted to read. Mm-hmm. I was voracious from the earliest age of reading. And I was also able to avoid what I didn't want to do. And I hated school. I always hated school. I don't like being taught to. One of the reasons I love reading is it's me pulling it rather than it pulling me. I probably didn't start cutting school as a regular scheduled thing until I went to high school. So probably up until freshman high school. So that's 13, 14, something like that. But once that hit, I would say for sure I would never go to school on Mondays and Fridays. And Wednesdays were optional. And I was very clever about getting out of trouble and living the life I wanted to lead.
I mentioned the joyride you got arrested for in Lou Wasserman's wife's Bentley.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you about your brother, though. How many cars did he go through by the time?
Oh, my God.
He was in, I think, his early 20s.
My brother, my parents, again, clueless about this. Oh, who knows? My brother was addicted to heroin at the age of, certainly no later than 15.
Why do you feel like you knew who he was by the time you were 9 years old? And that never
Because
changed?
he was very sadistic to me. He clearly was troubled probably from chemistry from birth or whatever, undiagnosed something. Who would ever know this? I would never know.
You said he was gruesomely and violently abusive.
He was abusive to me, really, sadistic to me.
Like how so?
He wouldn't beat me up, but if there was an object that he could throw at me, he would throw and aim for my head. He was sadistic to me. And that happened about 8 or 9, my age, 8 or 9. He was 4 years older than me.
And stuff that could really hurt you.
Oh, yeah. My brother was very smart. He would only do damage that couldn't be seen.
What do you mean?
Well, in other words, he would not do something where I would have some big gash down my head where somebody would say, around the house would say, oh my God, we better send him to the hospital. Yeah. But he was quite sadistic.
How did he go from marijuana to heroin so fast?
I don't know. I'll never know. It was certainly, this is again in the 50s in Beverly Hills, which was hardly, some den of iniquity. And in school he went to, schools I went to as well, him before he was thrown out of various schools, and then he went into a lot of private schools and military academies and things, as my parents were trying to figure out some way out for him. But my parents, in dealing with this, so I don't know how he became addicted to heroin or where, but he certainly was absolutely by the time he was 14 or 15 for sure. I think it could be even earlier. But anyway, my parents, whenever he would get off drugs, which through various methods, means, whatever, they would get him off drugs. So when he got to be 16, he got a car. And then from 16 to 25, which is when, 26, I think at least 10, maybe 15 different cars came and went as he would get these cars. He would either crash them or sell them or whatever for drugs. Then he'd get off drugs. My parents would be so overjoyed they'd get him a new car. I mean, it became like the joke of the house.
And you're thinking what at the time?
I'm thinking nothing, because I was hibernating and I was not. I was so kind of away from the environment that I lived in. He compartmentalizing everything I could.
And I know compartmentalizing is a big theme throughout your life. He passed away at a young age because...
He got shot. He got killed at the age of 36.
I think the bitterness you mentioned you have towards him will ever dissipate?
You know, I don't know if it's bitterness. I don't really think it's bitterness. I think it's kind of solid state. I hated what he did to my parents. I didn't really care much what he did to me, but I really hated what he did. He robbed my parents of 20 years of their life. And so I kind of froze it in time. I don't have anything lingering, but I also don't have my wife, Dion, has constantly said to me, forgive him, you must forgive him, you must forgive him.
Right.
And I say, you know, sorry, that's a lack in me, I can't forgive him. I don't care about him, but I can't forgive him.
What about drugs and you? I mean, I know you messed around a little bit with stuff, but not to the point
my
of...
drug use, I mean, compared to my brother, it's, you know, kind of a millidrop. But I did start smoking dope when I was 23. And it was absolutely true, because I did not, in my environment in Beverly, no one, even then, very few people were even smoking grass. But I'm 23 in New York, and I remember the first time I did smoke grass, and I had a great time. And then through my 20s, kind of like occasional, not so much. And yes, I lived at the Bel Air Hotel, and I stashed some in the hillside next to my little cabin there, cottage there. And I grew a mountainside of marijuana plants, it seemed.
But Quaaludes were your drug of choice?
Yeah, definitely.
Why?
The greatest drug ever invented.
Okay, explain. As somebody who's not done Quaaludes before, explain that.
They don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's long past my time for it, whatever. But Quaaludes were a drug that made you feel so completely well and safe, with no after effects and no addictive nature to them. They weren't addictive, though if you could get them, you'd get them. And for a relatively short, this probably lasted, 4 years, something like that. These are the years of Studio 54, 78 to 80, basically. They were the drug of life.
How about the best time you ever had at Studio 54?
Oh, I had so many great times. I mean, the fact that I'm alive is the miracle of the
Oh, come on, really?
Oh, yeah, all of us. I mean, well, you have to picture this. So we're, kind of defined group of us. So I'm 36 years old, 35, 36 years old. And I'm working every day at probably 8 or 9 o'clock at the latest, till 7 or 8 at night. I'm working really hard. And at 11 or 12 o'clock, we all gather at one of our friends' houses and stay there for an hour or two, go to studio at 1:30, stay till 4.
Sometimes 5.
Or so, or 5. I don't know about the sleeping part, and then go to work at 8 in the morning. And did this...
With a big job.
Yeah, I was chairman of Paramount. And now this was not every night, but this was probably 3 or 4 nights a week, and not weekends. So this was weeknights. I mean, it's just, I don't know how me and Dion, my wife, not then, but we were together during part of those years. So yeah, it was a miracle of survival.
You said you participated in extreme hedonistic behavior at Studio 54.
Yeah. Now the thing is, what I did not do, which almost everyone at Studio did, I did not do coke.
Why?
And I was afraid. I mean, I could never be, given my brother, I could, too close to the idea that I could be addicted to something would be, a cross to a vampire. So I could never go there. So lots of my friends were in the basement of Studio doing cocaine. Not me once ever.
And what's crazy about all of that is with as much stuff as you could have gotten yourself in trouble for, you then almost killed yourself through smoking.
This is totally true. And it is really amazingly true. But then, because at that time, we really didn't know smoking was dangerous. You know, everybody smoked.
You still smoke today?
Oh my God, no. Oh, no. But, you know, when I was growing up and whatever, you know, I started smoking when I was 16. And it was, there was no perceived danger in it.
When was the moment you realized you had to stop?
Well, because it was disgusting. I had to stop. And actually, Dion almost left me many times because at the like in the morning, I smoked so many cigarettes. There'd be like a bowl or an ashtray that was kind of big, and there'd be 30 cigarettes in it by 12 o'clock or something during the morning as I'm getting grosses from movies all over the country. I would be smoking these cigarettes. But it wasn't until 25 years later I thought, this is awful. It's a smelly, dirty thing. Again, I didn't think it was for health reasons. I just thought it was cruddy, and I didn't like the fact that I had yellow finger. I mean, you know, the whole thing, whatever. And I actually stopped smoking by saying, one day when I woke up, I said, I don't need the next cigarette. I'm gonna keep smoking. I'm not gonna, of course, stop smoking. How could I do that? I've been smoking forever, many packs a day. But I don't need the next cigarette. And the more I said it, from that literal moment, I stopped smoking. And I never had any withdrawal, I never had anything, but it was this mantra of, yeah, I'm gonna smoke, but I don't need that next cigarette.
But it was the vaping that then caused the lung?
Then, I didn't smoke a cigarette for at least 20 years, 25 years, something like that. I'm totaling myself up to over 100. So I'm off in the years, whatever. But I did start vaping, and it collapsed my lung. And I would say to anybody, anyone, the worst thing you can do is smoke. If you need to, have to do that. Hopefully don't, but don't vape. Vape's dangerous, because I absolutely believe that if you vape a lot, which is what most people who vape do, I'm talking about not vaping marijuana, I'm talking about pure tobacco. Mm-hmm. If you vape, you're gonna get sick. You're gonna get probably cancer. And I absolutely believe that.
So we were talking a moment ago about you being, in your mid-30s running Paramount. There were, I think some pivotal moments in your career that got you there, but you get, I think a family friend ends up getting you a job interning at William Morris. You didn't have the slightest interest in anything there that generated revenue, but explain how your version of the William Morris reading program kind of influenced your early business success.
Yeah, I mean, I was so lucky that I found a place. I'm 19 years old. I have no experience, obviously, in anything, and I go to William Morris. I didn't want to be an agent. I couldn't have been an agent anyway, but I didn't want to. I had no interest in that.
You called it morally corrupting.
But, well, eventually,
over the long term, yeah.
I do think it is corrupting because, for many reasons. I mean, it is a profession. It's not a dishonorable one, but it is one where the essential thing is you got to lie. You got to. These are not heinous lies, but you have to. In promoting your clients, you're essentially making up tales and stories, and in talking to your clients, you're often doing the same thing. Anyway, I had no interest in doing it, but what I got is lucky that in this agency, there were file rooms before, of course, everything became digitized. There were big file cabinets in this room twice the size of this. And I read the entire file room, which took me about 3 years. So it was the greatest stroke of luck that I got to basically read the history of the entertainment business, the history of it, because William Morris had been in business since 1890, and this is now 1963. So they had every artist from every part of the entertainment business and their entire history in these file cabinets, and I got to read it. What a foundation.
How do you wind up on a plane with Chairman Goldenson going to California?
Oh, wow. So now we're at ABC, and I'm in the program department at ABC, and I got the idea that we should make movies for television rather than just television series, which is what the networks at that time, 3 networks, all basically programmed, were half-hour and hour series. And those kind of bored me because they were in stasis. You know, nothing ever changed. The father knows best. The family was for 10 years. The teenager of 19 was 19 instead of 29. So nothing ever changed, and those series bored me. And I thought, why don't we make movies for television rather than buy movies that have run in theaters? Why don't we make our own? And so I'm 24. Almost 25, I think, at the time. And I had this idea, and everybody at ABC thought it was kind of folly, but the chairman of ABC, who never got involved in programming, just dropped into a meeting just to listen one day, and I kind of spouted out this idea. And he said, let's go to California and see if we can sell this idea to the old moguls. And at this time, all the founders, they were on their kind of waning days of being in power at these movie companies. And so Mr. Goldenson and I went out to LA to try and convince them to make these movies for us, and they all turned us down.
And Lou Wasserman's MCA ends up saying, we'll make all of them for you. And it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, you're in this meeting with other ABC execs, you're the kind of young kid, everybody's on board with MCA, Lou's company, just handling everything, and you, to your credit, have the testicular fortitude to speak your mind.
I couldn't help myself. I felt so, every one of these studios turned us down except one, MCA, Universal.
And by the way, just to interrupt momentarily, the context here too for millennials or Gen Zers, ABC, you know, one of only 3 networks at the time. You know, you could have a program that 30% of the country's watching at any one time. So the gravity.
The difference between now and then, when, you know, if you got 4,200 people, you have an audience, or you have, because of the internet, you know, tens and tens of millions, but fragmented and fragmented. Then the entire media was 3 television networks. That was it. And so, yeah, we had programs that got easily, if it was a failure, you'd have 20 million, but a success was 30, 40, 50 million people watching at the same time. There were no such thing as recorders. It was all live, channel turning by hand or by a little clicker remote control.
Wait, I'm sure I have my numbers wrong, but it's like, what, a quarter of the Super Bowl audience for just a normal program?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Those were those days. And anyway, this one company, MCA, they demanded they do all the movies, and we couldn't. And I said, no, I don't want to give control to any one place. I want as many people, as many ideas as we can get, and I want the network to control it. It's our money. Why should we turn this over to them? Let us do it ourselves and do it with all sorts of producers. You know, independent studios don't want to do it, but individuals will want to do it, and that'll be creatively just much better for us, and we'll control the world. All my older suited colleagues said, that's folly, you don't have the experience, you know this. I said, that's all right, we'll learn it. And thank God Mr. Goldenson said, you know what, that's the right way to do it. And so at 24, basically because everyone thought it would fail, I got the ability to run the program. And it kind of made my career, of course.
You wrote, I'd been the most successful executive in film and television over most of the last 10 years, and yet I'd just been duped into joining a soon-to-be bankrupt company. You go on to say, what do you do when you realize you've made an agreement with a con man? And in comes Rupert.
Yes.
How did kind of you navigate that period?
Well, I had gone from Paramount, which was very successful. It had really led the movie business of the 10 years I was there, it led it for the latter 7 years.
Where Michael Eisner was your number two?
Michael was with me, yes, and a bunch of other great executives. And I left Paramount to go to Fox. And when I got to Fox, also as the chairman of the company and the chief executive, I guess, the title. When I got to Fox, I realized that I had been fraudulently brought into a situation that was actually a bankrupt entity.
Yet it was a very attractive situation going into it.
Superficially, it was 20th Century Fox. Greatest studio lot, fantastic history, etc. Unfortunately, a con man, Marvin Davis, who'd put up almost no money to buy it and leverage the rest of it, wouldn't put up any more money, and the banks were calling due on the loans, and there I was. And so my solution to it was to get Mr. Davis to sell the company to someone else. That someone else was Rupert Murdoch, and that's when Rupert came into my life.
What was involved with convincing Rupert to bet the company, and why have you said before his risk appetite is far greater than yours will ever be?
Buying Fox was not the thing of risking betting his company, but shortly after he bought into Fox, this is really, I think, before the ink was even dry, we got the opportunity. I'd always wanted to start a fourth network.
For a long time.
Yeah. But we couldn't get the financing and this and that. But through this serendipitous moment, it looked like we could get a group of television stations that could be the backbone of building a network. And people tried to build beyond the 3 networks for decades. Every one of them had failed. I thought that the 3 networks were now all programming in the same kind of way without any diversity. And I thought, we could build an alternative network. One day when Rupert happened to be passing from Australia to New York, again, before the deal probably even closed for him buying, at that time, half the company, in walked someone who owned these stations who was willing to sell them, and Rupert happened to be passing through, and I invited him to this, what I thought was a meeting just to chat, and it became apparent that we could do this, and after he left, the seller left, I said, I've always wanted to start a fourth network, and I went on for 5 minutes or so about what I thought it could be, and now this is in '84, when $1 billion was a lot of money, and that was what it was going to cost. And Rupert said, yeah, I'll bet the company. And that was it. I said, well, don't you want to, do you want me to give you, I can, top of my little hat, I can give you figures, I can do this, I can do that. He said, no, the concept's solid, let's go. That's what happened.
You're thinking what at the time?
I'm thinking I'm dealing with a crazy person.
Really? And you said if he's on site and he's engaged, he's the most stimulating collaborator. How so?
He's the shrewdest and best gambler. This is a person who started with a single newspaper in Adelaide, Australia. And in Australia, within 10 years or so, became the biggest newspaper man in the entire country with dozens and dozens of papers all over, et cetera, and magazines. Then he goes to the UK and he does it all over again. Then he decides that satellite television came into being. And there was a company called B-Sky-B, British Sky Broadcasting, which was funded by the government, which had an absolute sole license. Rupert figures out how from another country to launch a satellite dish that was this size, where theirs was a big satellite thing. And he busts the market. Comes to the United States, buys an interest in Fox, finances me to build the fourth network. So on 3 hemispheres, the shrewdest gambler, but one who actually enjoyed the thrill of betting his enterprise. That's how much conviction and toughness is inside the man. And while I'm not a supporter of Fox News, which I had nothing to do with, that happened after I left Fox.
Introduced Rupert to Roger Ailes.
I did introduce him to Ailes. But anyway, I have such respect for him as the most supportive person when you're trying to build a new idea. And he's launched so many new ideas in media that it's just almost unimaginable.
How did Home Alone save the company from bankruptcy?
Well, Rupert, being, as I say, this gambler, overextended himself time and again, and almost always was able to come through it. But one time in the early 90s, I think 90, 91, there was a particular market disruption of some kind, and he had borrowed too much money. And he had so many banks, and there was like 80 banks, and they had to each agree to extend his loans, and they really weren't going to do it. And the company was running out of money. And at Fox,
you deferred taking your bonus for a long time. Yeah,
we at Fox, we made this movie called Home Alone, and literally the cash flow. Fox was kind of on News Corp, the parent company, was on fumes. It was the cash from Home Alone that actually saved his company.
How do you think things would be different had Rupert bought CNN?
You mean and not started Fox? Mm-hmm. Well, we tried, by the way.
Right.
Rupert and I went down and had dinner with Ted Turner when Ted Turner was on fumes, and Ted Turner wouldn't sell to us. What would have happened is he would have turned CNN into Fox News. What we know of today as Fox News. I think that would have been a terrible thing. I mean, at least we have CNN now, even though CNN is, I think, kind of bedraggled. We have CNN and trying to compete pitifully at the moment with Fox News.
And by the way, I don't know if you were surprised by the news that your interest in CNN made recently, but like, what's the genesis of that?
Because for the last couple of years, who knows? You never know. Probably the chances of my being able to get it are at best 30, 40%, whatever. But for the last couple of years, I've been very interested, because I do think that, I don't think it's because the people are, are untalented or whatever. I think they've been squeezed, the people who run CNN. And I think it has not been managed optimally. You go anywhere in the world, and the video news service is and has been CNN. And so I think it has enormous potential influence. And I think it would be very worthwhile to be really fully competitive, which I don't think it is now.
What do you think would have to happen for you to be able to buy it?
Opportunity. The seller becomes a seller instead of someone who says, I want to keep it, like anything.
You had written in your book, if only Ted Turner were running it today. And I was surprised when I saw that, because and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you're friendly with John Malone and David Zaslav. Why do you kind of feel that way?
I've said this to David Zaslav, and I've said this to John Malone. And David Zaslav has disagreed with me, as he honorably has, of course, the right to do, where I've said to him, I don't think you're programming, I don't think it's being optimally programmed. I don't think it's competitive. Now, by the way, the facts support that, meaning that its ratings have declined, its revenue has declined. It still is quite profitable, but...
How would you alter it?
Oh, in every way. Look, feel, and see, every way. And I mean, I hope I get the chance. I don't think I will, but I hope I do.
it seems like way back when you were kind of screwed out of buying Paramount because of
I
Bear
wasn't
Stearns.
screwed out of.
Well, wasn't it Bear Stearns like stock?
No. The thing about Paramount, who cares? It's so long, ancient history. But
the best line though when
yes.
it.
I got in a bidding war with Sumner Redstone's Viacom company, and we went back and forth bidding the price up until I said it's no longer economically viable, and I did not make the last bid. If I had made the last bid, I would have owned Paramount, but I didn't because I thought it was diseconomic. Now, by the way, I was wrong. I was chicken.
If you had gotten Paramount more recently, and I think Michael Eisner was telling me a little bit about how you guys talked about that. Well, if you guys had gotten it instead of the Ellisons, what would you have done with it?
Well, I always maintained, and I think this is generally true, it's not absolute like nothing is, but I think if you get lucky, you find a company that's been mismanaged. And the longer it's been mismanaged and still exists, even if it's on somewhat fumes, that's your opportunity. Paramount was mismanaged for 10 years, at least. So just coming into it at that, kind of nadir of mismanagement is filled with opportunity if you just do step by step the right things.
Hollywood, obviously now ruled by kind of the tech behemoths. A comment you made that I thought was kind of funny was there used to be a kind of inbred, incestuous quality to Hollywood that's actually good. How so?
Well, when it was a company town, it still is somewhat, but much, much less so. When it was a company town, you lived and breathed in the best way. Not that it wasn't viciously, rapacious, competitive, often ruthless. When you're in any kind of creative enterprise at scale, it's a rough business, so to speak, because you're dealing hits and misses and misses and hits, and that process is a cauldron often. But even within that, there's because you're part of that community, you're living and breathing it really on essentially honorable terms with the product you make. And that's all you do. These movie companies that then became movie television companies, but they all started in the early part of the 20th century. And by the 30s, 40s, 50s, they had enormous worldwide influence. All they did is make movies. The head of that company was as much involved in movies as the gaffer who was doing the lights. Contrast that with the period of 2000 and post, when these businesses began to consolidate all sorts of other businesses. So the process of making movies, instead of being the only thing you did, was number 8, 12, 14 in the corporate organization. So the essence of the process was less important to the conglomerate. And if it becomes less important, then it becomes more kind of corporatized and institutionalized, and less about actually the stuff at the base of it, which is it a good idea? Is it a good product? Et cetera, et cetera. So I think that old system is the better system for making better product. And I think that's mostly gone now. Now, then you overlay on it the seismic change of streaming, which rendered everything gone in a flash. It used to be like, name any, the last one maybe in this generation was Barbie, maybe, because it took hold of the culture for a period of time. Most stuff that's made for television and movies, it's over in a flash. It doesn't sustain. There's no. We talked earlier about a television program that got 30, 40, 50, 70 million people. Mm-hmm. We had 2/3 of the country watching Roots for 11 nights, you know, and it lasted, it was so deep in the culture. And so as you get such optionality, so many options for you, that it just comes and goes. None of it has very much importance. I just think that's unfortunate. It's why you're going to argue and yell about it. It is the evolution of technology and our own media culture. And it's like an old person, I yearn for days when it was simpler. The thing is, we really did have, while it was tumultuous, we all of us in the movie business and we're having a great time. We were having fun. Right now, you ask almost anyone who's in the movie or television business, other than as a one-off, meaning it's their life, their career, very, like this many people are having a good time.
Why?
Because it's so difficult now, because it's so industrialized, because it's so enervating. The process is so enervating. If you're an actor, you go to auditions, you learn humiliation, you learn all sorts of things when you get rejected, but you're sitting across from a person who's actually rejecting you, and you know that's your lot in life until they accept you and it works out or it doesn't work out. It's a human process. Today, this doesn't exist. You know how you audition for work if you're an actor? In front of a screen, your little iPhone, you shoot a scene in your little cubbyhole room, and you send it electronically to the casting agent, and you never hear another word. I mean, just think of the impersonalization of that and how impossible that would be if you're an actor wanting to score and wanting to make your way, that's your process for getting there. That's just one tiny little example of what technology has done.
And I want to veer ever so slightly into politics, and then I want to get back to your career because there's so much more I want to ask you about. But what do you make of the tech companies' embrace of President Trump?
Oh my God. Oh no, not oh my God. It's necessity. I don't, a lot of these people are my very close friends, and I've had to defend them.
Really?
Yeah, and I do defend them, and I do it for this reason. If your business depends upon government contracts, and you, with this particular administration, are not that friend, or not a friend, or you're an enemy, you are not going to get the contract. It's very binary. This is unheard of. I mean, we are passing through this moment in history, which I hope it means we are passing through it and will come to the other end of it. But that is the condition of life today. It is true, and therefore, if that's what you do, I find no moral depredation in your wanting to be on the good side of it.
Because I was going to say you're buddies with Jeff Bezos.
Well, I'm friendly with many people, and I definitely, Mr. Bezos is, he's...
Like, what do you think when you see the amount spent on the Melania doc?
Well, what do I think? I don't advocate it. I don't know that he was involved in it, by the way, and I think he's actually, or I think people have said he was not involved in that decision. Nevertheless, it's his company, so he's responsible for it. But again, look at his situation. He's in competition with Elon Musk in SpaceX, right? That's his competitor. Elon Musk is very, except for a moment, aligned with this administration. He's got Blue Origin trying desperately to compete to be at least the second player in that. How do you go against the government of the United States when you know that that government, if you're not supportive of it, is gonna deny you being able to be in business? Of course he has to do that. There's no moral judgment.
independent of politics, you once said Bezos is closer to Steve Jobs than most people give him credit for. How so?
Because he's so much the real deal. I mean, this is someone who, and you think of starting a business on books, who built this Amazon that invented the Kindle, that a reading device that no one had thought possible, that invented essentially using its computing power and allowing other people to use it and building a huge, he's built under complete adversity, coming close to bankruptcy, which is what happened in around 2000 to Amazon. He just by grit and grime and brilliance, true brilliance. I mean, you listen to Jeff Bezos for 10 minutes and you're dealing with a mind that is so capacious and so interesting. And the things he taught the world of business, time after time, product after product, it's remarkable.
I want to ask you about good deals and bad deals you made over the years. We can start with when Amazon was on the brink, the $2 billion worth of Amazon debt that didn't quite work out for you.
Yes, well, it would have worked out. We thought if we bought their debt, one of two things would happen. We'd get paid back 4 times over, or we'd own the company. And at that time, we had to get approval. And our overlords in France at Vivendi stalled us to the point that, without giving us an answer, that period of opportunity just passed.
Would have been worth
a lot.
Speaking of Steve Jobs and turning down the Pixar offer he made to you, why and how much do you think that would have been worth had you said yes?
Oh, I have no idea in monetary terms. I couldn't do that. But it was just, the truth is, I still have no affinity for animation. I don't really like it. I don't watch animated films. I don't really understand them. And so when I saw Toy Story in its embryonic state, I didn't like it very much. And it was like, of course it was like a completely dumbass decision, but.
What was the bigger miss, that or AOL?
No, AOL, Toy Story was commission, meaning, I said no to something I should have said yes to. AOL I said yes to, but I couldn't get the financing to buy out the owner, Paul Allen, who owned 25% of it at the time. I couldn't get the financing to be able to buy it, so just the window passed. That's omission.
You remember being criticized for not buying MySpace back in the day?
Oh, of course. Yeah. But look, one of the lucky things that happened to me when I got into the e-commerce and the internet is that I never forgot that you really had to have revenue and expenses in some balance in whatever you did. And so a lot of those internet companies that I could have acquired instead of the ones I did or built is because I couldn't make that balance of their revenue and expense. And in the early days of the internet, everybody was just going after huge expense and no revenue. And I just didn't want to do that.
I mean, kind of similar to what's going on right now with AI.
It's very possible.
What made merging Ticketmaster and Live Nation one of the worst mistakes of your career?
No, merging them was brilliant. Oh my God, should I use such a ego-invested word?
That's not how it came up.
Whatever, it's true. It was brilliant. Putting those two together was absolutely right. Here's the company that dominated ticketing and the company that dominated producing and distributing live events. I have a perfect merger. My stupidity or my naivete was that when I did that, I said, instead of, which we could have done, demanded control of that entity, I said, let's have a board of directors, 6 from your company and 6 from my company. And we'll have no rules other than that, thinking that the balance would be an honorable balance. What I did not know is one of my 6 directors was an infidel who had made a deal with their 6 directors,
Irving,
the dread Irving Azoff, to actually vote with them. And so at the first board meeting, I was outvoted. And the next day I sold my stock.
how does that influence your view of Ari Emanuel?
Ari was part of the coup, so to speak, for sure. And he did apologize. I've never spoken to Irving Azoff, nor would, after that. But he's an incredibly aggressive player who is smart enough and devious enough to make a great way in media. And so I have certainly respect for that.
And he's biggest agent on the planet.
And he's not the biggest agent anymore, but he's become quite entrepreneurial.
You wanted to pass on Indiana Jones back in the day. How about the best deal in history that you gave to George Lucas for the original, and why you improved it for the sequel?
Well, we made Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I loved the material, but I was very worried about, I thought that opening sequence would bankrupt us just on its own. So I was very worried about that, but we did a lot to ring fence that and whatever. Anyway, we made it, but I was very careful when we made that deal with George Lucas, which was as great a deal as anybody had ever achieved in the movie business. And I said, look, I don't want to be in the position of ever arguing about this again, so if we make a sequel, I want to be sure that it's on the same terms as we made this original, and I want that to be contractually laid in concrete. And that's what we did. And then when he said it's time to make the sequel, he said, no, that deal's not good enough for me anymore. And I said, well, that's a level of hypocrisy from someone who disdains Hollywood morals that I can't stand, and tried to reverse it, and he wouldn't do it. In the end, we ended up paying what he demanded.
Sanctimonious hypocrite, I think were the words you used.
That would be the phrase.
I mentioned we just profiled Michael Eisner for an episode. How did your relationship evolve with Michael over the years?
Well, I met Michael when I was 23, I think, 23, when I had just come to ABC and he came for a job interview. And I recognized on the spot this was someone to pay attention to. And so that began.
He thought he was interviewing with somebody else.
Yeah, he thought he was interviewing with my boss. But that became, that was the foundation of a relationship that now, 60 years later, we are the closest of friends.
You said he was capable of saying things that were so ridiculous, and then in the same breath, out would come something absolutely brilliant.
The genius of Michael.
So like what?
Oh, Michael's fount of original ideas, original thought, original takes on things that just defy, your understanding. It's just out of native talent.
What do you remember from the days when Jack Nicholson couldn't get a job?
Oh, but I met Jack, I was 19, 20. Yeah, certainly, or very early days at William Morris. And Jack, I don't know that he'd even gotten a job at that point. And he was hanging around William Morris. And I was one of the only people who would pay any attention to it. And we became friendly and been friends ever since.
And how about the time Katharine Hepburn calls you, and then the swimming pool adventures you guys would have together?
Well, Katharine Hepburn came into my life when I was at ABC. Probably I'm 25, 6 at the time. And she had made a Glass Menagerie, Tennessee Williams played. She had done a version of it, and she didn't like the idea that we were going to interrupt it with commercials, and so she called ABC, and they got me on the phone. It's probably an accident. And through that beginning, difficult conversation with the great Hepburn, we became friends. And she would come to California every once in a while, and she loved driving around the houses that she had lived in at various times during the 30s, I guess 30s, 40s, 50s. Now we're in the 60s, 70s, I guess. 70s probably. And we would go swim in these pools of these houses and sneak in and sneak out. And I mean, it was just a great time to be with a great character.
And there are endless people I could throw out, and I'm going to move on from this, but Warren Beatty and Johnny Carson and Andy Warhol, and you gave the green light to a then unknown Steven Spielberg. I mentioned to you right before we started, I spoke this morning with Simpsons creator Matt Groening.
Oh yes, tell me
about you.
Tell me.
I guess my question for you is because I wanted to kind of take a little bit of a dive into kind of a program that, you were at least partly responsible for birthing, and I thought that would be a great one. What did you notice during the cartoons that ran during Tracy Ullman's show that led you to greenlighting?
Well, I
the
thought they
Simpsons?
were great. I mean, I just thought they were original, and I thought the characters were great. But again, these were minute 30, maybe most 2 minutes, little interstitials that we ran between the scenes of the Tracy Ullman sketch comedy half hour. And it wasn't me, it was Jim Brooks who came to me, and he produced the Tracy Ullman show, created it, and he's the one who collaborated with Matt Groening to create The Simpsons. And Jim came to me and said, I think we could make a half-hour series of this. And it was such a good idea. Nobody had done, again, that kind of show in 30 years.
Wait, but you say such a good idea. I'm listening to you talk about Pixar a moment ago, and you just don't get animation.
But it's true.
So Matt was talking to me about how your genius was recognizing you could do animation aimed at adults.
I never thought it was animation. How's that?
Okay, explain that.
The nature of The Simpsons was so character and story based, and was such a unique form that I thought those were actual live action characters. I never thought of it as an animated show. So
originally folks at the company
were
were suggesting
no, they thought it was crazy.
And only suggesting doing a special, and then Matt and company were pushing, and then you guys came back with 4 specials, and Matt said it was you, though, that were like, no, we're going to greenlight 13 episodes.
Well, it was because, as a practical matter, because it took at the time 6 months to manufacture an episode, you really couldn't arithmetically put on this show and actually have it be on week to week to week, which was the nature of television at the time. You couldn't do it unless you ordered 13 of them in advance. 6 months in advance, you had to order the whole thing so you could consecutively air them week to week to week. And so it was the biggest commitment that Fox had ever made, and it was not because we kind of wanted to. It was the only way you could do it. So I was up for the gamble.
2 rumors that I wanted to kind of call out to you. The first was one that he said he was unsure about. He brought up to me that you always used to leave a car of yours parked in front of your office so nobody would know if you were actually there.
That's kind of true.
The second one being, I brought up to him the Mr. Burns character that has widely been speculated, in part modeled after you. He told me he wanted to dispel that, couldn't be farther from the truth, and that he's afraid of you, so he wanted to make sure that I knew it wasn't
That's
true.
so sweet of him. And I've so enjoyed being the emulation, so to speak, or the origin of Mr. Burns. I mean, what a great, horribly evil character to have you in kind of your imaginated past.
I wanted to talk to you about your personality. Why has living in the moment been hard for you?
I've thought about this I've thought about this recently more than I think probably I've ever thought about it. I think that it's because I had a fear that was ingrained in me very early that there was kind of an anvil over my head of consequences from basically homosexuality. So that fear, kind of ever present, really since I'm a child, has probably the root cause of not living in the moment because I was afraid of the consequences of the moment. And that's probably I've not dug that deeply in there, but I think that's probably the answer.
Comments have been made about you before about micromanaging. You've said your need to be in control has never wavered. Why?
Well, I think the need to be in control comes from the lack of control. I could not control my biology. I could not control my environment. And it became very important to me that the things that I could control, I controlled. And so that's always been that's always been in it's almost pure DNA. We can divine where and what it comes from, but it is from a lack of control that means I need to be in control of things that I can control.
What about the ability to always say the right thing to make a situation better?
Well, I think, again, if you're out of my childhood and navigating it, my mother's personality was such that I learned very early to keep her in a pleasant mood. I figured out how to say the right things to do that. And so when I grew from there, I had a kind of bit of an extra ability to please people that grew out of that situation with my mother.
Your best friend, David Geffen, has been quoted as saying about you that you've mellowed tremendously. How have you seen that happening in you? No? You don't believe that?
I don't think so.
Why not?
Because I don't think I've mellowed. I don't think that's true. I probably have, and maybe I'm equivocating here because I still have a decent amount of rage.
Really?
Sure.
Okay, in what scenarios?
Oh, anything that displeases me.
Parts of the scenario?
Oh yeah, join the life. So I
How does that come out in you?
Well, I probably have learned over the years, certainly not probably, I have learned to suppress it, find other ways of dealing with it. Maybe I just don't want to admit that I've mellowed, but I probably have.
Do you think you're a good boss?
I think I'm an interesting one, and I don't know. You have to do the etymology of good, but I think I'm definitely an interesting one, and I'm one that, if you can tolerate me, and tolerate my inconsistencies, and tolerate all of my juice, my stuff, I have enough evidence that you can be the better for it, because while I don't like mentorship and whatever, I've seen enough people who've been in my environment and how successful they've been out of my environment. So, I think there's something there.
I would argue there's a connectivity here back to your Charlie Bluhdorn days and even earlier. But you've said
always connectivity.
You've said with regards to hiring that you much prefer hiring people who are blank slates. Give them responsibilities before they're considered ready, and drop them in the deep end.
Oh my God, yes.
Why?
Look, you can have two methods of hiring people. One is that which you bring people in at the earliest stage of their career, when they don't have experience and are not formed. And then you give them more responsibility than they're prepared for or that they have any experience for. And then you watch what happens. And at least a very good part of the time, I put it in terms of swimming. They may drown for a few minutes, not to complete, capitulation, but they learn to navigate, they learn to swim, and then they learn to swim faster and faster and faster. And I think that's a great process, as against reading a resume of someone who's experienced, who qualifies for the job, who comes in and presents themselves to you. You don't know them, you just read something, talk to them for an hour or two, and then you hire them. You don't know screw all about them. And they're already formed. So the odds and the chance that they're going to come into a foreign environment and actually succeed in that, the odds are just bad. So which would you prefer? I prefer a system where you bring people in at the earliest stages and have them grow up in your company. And you are a failure, and I've failed many times at this, you are a failure if you have to go hire from the outside rather than promote people from the inside.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you a couple more questions about Charlie. You're thinking what when at 32 years old, he's pursuing you to be the head of Paramount?
Well, Charlie I'd met when I was 24 or 5.
But by the way, if I could indulge you, all of a sudden he shows up when you're a kid in your office to argue.
Well, that's
with
it. Yeah, Charlie, I'm 24 or something, and I'm buying movies, and he just bought Paramount, and he comes in to sell these movies, and I kind of turned him down, and he didn't like being turned down, but he respected being turned down, and so that,
which it might as well have been Jeff Bezos showing up in a kid's office.
Yeah, but
today.
that began my relationship with Charlie, and over the years, 25 to 32, he tried to hire me 30 times to be head of their television operations or become an executive in their this or that.
You learned never to give an inch when arguing with him.
I miraculously, it seems impossible that a 24-year-old could argue with this business titan, but I did. I don't know how or why, but I did, and he liked that, and so then I'm 32, and he comes and says to me, well, all right, now you're gonna have to come over here. And I said, no, I'm not. He said, yeah, I'm gonna make you chairman of Paramount. I said, Charlie, this is crazy. I'm from television. Television people don't go into the movie business. And certainly not at the level at being chairman of Paramount. This is madness. And he said, well, I'm doing it. I said, yes.
The silver frame that he gave you, what about it was so impactful to you?
Well, he had taken this great chance on me. Again, I was the first person from television to come into the movie business. I had no credentials, et cetera, et cetera. And the first 2 years was very tough as I was learning how to navigate in this new world of mine. And I said to Charlie, after about 2 years being head of Paramount, I said, you really have to get rid of me because it's not working, and you took this great risk, and just do yourself the favor and let me go. And he said, just go back to your office and shut up. And I knew we were doing good work, but it hadn't come out yet, kind of. And then a few months later, we released Saturday Night Fever, and it was a huge, obviously, mega hit, and it turned the fortunes of Paramount. And I have, in a place that I see every day when I'm in one of our places we live, and I never pass by without looking at it. It's a little silver frame, and it's the box office chart of that week or whatever with Saturday Night Fever #1 and Charlie handwritten on it. No one but no one deserves this more than you. Even when I say it, it just...
What about it touches you so much?
How can, I mean, no one but no one deserves this more than you, from someone who took such a risk and it came through.
So much later on in life, at the tail end of your time with Rupert and Fox, you essentially go to Rupert and say you want to be a principal too. He says your last name's not Murdoch. The rest is kind of history, and you go through this period where you're figuring out, what you want to do. You wonder if your life or career had peaked. What was it about Dion mentioning QVC to you that completely changed things?
I'd left Fox because I wanted to see if I could start something on my own, and I had a blank piece of paper with not an idea in my head. I didn't want to have an idea in my head. And I thought I want to create some space between me and all the people who wanted me to run another movie company or do stuff like that, and I didn't want to repeat myself. And so I was kind of wandering around the country, and Dion calls me and she says, you have to come to QVC in Penn. I said, QV, what? What is that? She said, it's this home. I said, what is home shopping? I didn't even heard of that thing. She said, no, you have to come to Pennsylvania and see this thing. And so I wasn't doing anything. I had an idea in my head, and I go to Pennsylvania and I see in a space about this size, this convergence of televisions and television sets and computers and telephones and this kind of primitive convergence of media. And I saw something that was an absolute epiphany, and I don't use that word lightly, which is I had only known you use screens for telling stories. That's what screens were for. I'd never known interactivity, and there I was seeing it in its primitive emergence at QVC, where you'd put up a product and people would, through a computer or through a telephone, through telephones, but managed by computers, would order it and it would be delivered to you. That interactivity, using screens for something other than telling stories, knocked me cold. And then, serendipitously, a few months later, I was offered to buy QVC, and I said, I now know what I'm going to do. And again, everybody in the orbit of Hollywood thought I'd truly lost my mind. What was I doing? But I knew what I was doing. I didn't know how, but I knew that this interactivity, this is 3 years before the internet, was being used by humans, by common folk. And I knew that it was going to change things. I didn't know how, but I wanted to participate. And that was just the great good luck of my life.
How do you take HSN within a year from losing $70 million a year to making 60?
Easy. I knew how to do it. It wasn't hard. It was just the company.
Come on.
No, it wasn't. The company was mismanaged. And I'd had this experience the year earlier with QVC, so I kind of knew the tools. But it was not, that's easy. Turning a company from loss to profit if it's in a business that isn't, to the winds, is not a hard trick. But what was just this great good luck is this is now 2 years before the internet. And along comes the internet, and I kind of had fluency in my fingertips to a degree. So I was able to attack all the opportunities that were to come once the internet came along with e-commerce, because I was in the primitive part of e-commerce, and that made the next, that created $100 billion of value.
And 9/11 happens. How close was Expedia to almost not happening because of that?
Well, travel stopped.
Right.
9/11, there was no travel worldwide. So Expedia, this travel business, had no revenue. It was like dead cold. And someone in the room, wasn't me, said, if there's life, there's travel. And I said, yeah, I'm going to bet on that. And so we bought the company even when it had no revenue.
More success with Match or
yes,
Tinder or Hinge?
we were very early in internet dating, and we bought Match, tiny little company in Texas, and built it. And then we invented Tinder and kind of dominated that whole world of online dating.
And correct me if I'm wrong, it's the home services part of your business that kind of funds some of the riskier stuff.
Well, we built up this interesting business model of kind of the anti-conglomerate, which is a multiplicity of businesses. Some work, some don't work, some fund them, others are successful, some are unsuccessful. But the fact that we were operating so many different businesses, and then we'd spin off to the public, ones that had established themselves. So that's kind of the anti-conglomerate of the conglomerate. It just was a rare business model.
But it worked.
Yeah.
Wanted to ask you so briefly about sexuality, because
Sure.
I feel like that's kind of, for whatever reason, been what's gotten so much attention with the memoir. But why do you believe Dr. Theodore Rich saved your life?
Because I was 19 years old. I was having this nervous breakdown because I was having to come to terms with my sexuality, my gray, odd, whatever, my own version of my stuff. And luckily, someone sent me to see him, and he, through patience and doggedness and whatever else a good teacher, doctor does for you, he kind of raised me. And so from 19 to 22, I'd say, 22, 23, he really brought me up and saved me.
How do you think therapy's helped you over the years?
I think you're very lucky if you get a good therapist, whether it's a deep psychoanalytic one or a therapeutic one or a psychopharmacological. Is that the right word? I know it's close enough. Yeah, ish. If you're lucky, you get that and you benefit from it. And I do think, I mean, is it luck? Yeah, I think so many things are, that you get in good hands, wherever they come from, with whatever the trauma is that you're trying to deal with.
And obviously times have changed so much now.
Oh,
but,
yes, of course.
I want to give two moments that I think give context to the times. Then the first one being at 11 years old when you write the Beverly Hills Library. What happens?
So I was, to say the least, confused. I didn't really understand this nature of mine. Ride my little bike down to the Beverly Hills Public Library, and I look at books on homosexuality, and in every single one of them, I was there, I don't know, maybe an hour or so. It was mental illness, repeatedly nailed for being a mental illness. It wasn't until probably 10 or 12 years after that, the American Psychiatric Association said, no, it's not a mental illness. But at 11 years...
You're thinking what?
But at 11 years old, if that's all you know, that's all you know. It's really devastating.
Explain what you did after you took an AIDS test.
Oh. So in the 80s, as AIDS started being, I never thought that I really didn't think I was a victim of it. But at one point, I thought, well, I guess I gotta take this test. And so I went to my doctor and did it. And then I became absolutely frozen with fear that there was in some little test tube somewhere outside of my body was a potential death sentence. And the idea that it existed, whether I was or not, was not, just the idea that in an animate object miles away from me, this thing could come back and I'd be told I was gonna die from it. It was so crazy making to me that I called my doctor and I said, first he wasn't in town, he was in some place, I don't know, some foreign territory. I got him on the phone and I said, you have to destroy this.
And he said what?
And he first said, no, I'm not, this is crazy. I said, look, you don't know how important this is to me. I can't have this knowledge out there in some test tube. I just can't bear the thought that it's there. I want it destroyed. You have to give me your word that you will do that so I can rest. Whether I've got AIDS or not is not the issue. The issue is, because I either do or don't, the issue is it's known somewhere outside of my body and I can't bear that. And he said, okay. And so I rested and relaxed and didn't think about it again. And a year or two later, he said to me, oh, by the way, of course, I opened the thing and you were negative, so.
Waited a year or two.
Oh, yeah.
You wrote, I would have secrets, but I would tell no lies.
Yes.
You also said, it wasn't courage, it was simply the minimum conditions of my conduct, and I recognize it now as the opposite of courage.
Yeah, I think that's true.
It just seems like you're unnecessarily hard on
No,
yourself.
I don't think so. I think that I mean, listen, I'm not hideously harsh on me for this. That was certainly not an act of courage, because courage would have been to say, really, I could be a role model for other people. I could make other people feel better about their circumstances if I was forthright about mine. That's an act of courage. I didn't do that.
And there
I mean, I have my reasons, I have my rationales, I have all of that. My sexuality was gray at best. It wasn't absolutely one way or the other, da, 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 da. I could have posed, I could have done this or that, but I wasn't courageous.
You and Dion, why have you called it the miracle of your life?
Does anybody not think that the person, if they have had a long-term relationship with someone, a sustained...
A good one, yeah.
Yes, not a bad one, obviously, it would end. But a long-term relationship with a single person is, I think, the miracle of anyone's life. And certainly it's the miracle of mine.
Met in 74, separated 81, reunited 91, married on your birthday in 2001. I felt bad when I DM'd you saying happy birthday the other day. I realized after it, I'm like, oh, I should have wished happy anniversary as well.
She reminded me of that.
I was reading an interview she did the other day, and she said in those early days, you were insistent, pointed out her first visit to you in LA and you hiring a limousine for her luggage. What stands out from those early days?
Oh, I mean, what stands out is they're like anything. I mean, these are wonderful and, to me, of course, unique. To anyone else, their memories would be unique. But we did not meet cute, but we had this coup de foudre where we were destined for each other. We didn't know it, obviously, at the time, but it was just very clear this was gonna happen. It was beyond our willpower to resist.
Looking back, would you have liked to have had a kid together?
Very much so. I was just too much of a dope. I was so immature.
What do you think you most respect about her?
It's the most respect. She kind of is Earth Mother. She has the capacity to take care of everyone. She is the essence of, and you would not think of it because of her glamorous nature and history, but she has such innate kindness that it's just, it's a fount of a constantly giving, loving kindness.
I mentioned I wanted to wrap talking about charity in Highline Park. I know Dion particularly likes the sunsets from there, but what do you remember from you going in before any visitors had yet
Well,
to
this is
enter?
actually for Little Island.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It was Little Island. I mean, took us 10 years to build Little Island, and it was,
almost didn't happen.
And it was
many times.
Enormous adversity and all of this and whatever. And when it just finished, before anybody came, I marveled at, like I do any public work or anything that is the will of a single person, to actually get something done in an adverse environment. It just made me glow with the idea that, my God, this thing happened and is going to bring 5,800,000 people have come across Little Island and been in its environment. And there are many other things you can do with philanthropy. There are many things that save lives and do whatever, but this makes people happy, and that makes me very happy.
From what I understand, they're like endless species of
There's like 60,000 plants. Some insane number.
How does that experience compare for you in terms of what you did with Highline?
Well, Highline was different. The little island was, the idea of building an island in the Hudson River is so insane.
Yeah.
So that was a creation from the ground up, so to speak, from the water up. The Highline was different. The Highline was an elevated railroad track that had been used in 60 years and was filled with weeds, and it was an obstruction. People wanted to tear it down. It almost got torn down. So it was a rescue mission, and that's completely different than an act of creation.
I know there's been talk about building a gondola to the Hollywood sign and then a circular.
We are building a park in Los Angeles in a place called Franklin Canyon.
Mm-hmm. Where does kind of that stand in the kind of ambition of what you want to do?
We just actually, I think a week or two ago, I mean, again, regulations to get to do anything. It took us years, but we got just the right to actually build the first section of it. So it's probably several years away from completion.
And what's still left on the kind of wish list in terms of philanthropic endeavors?
I'm really building it now, meaning I'm thinking more and more about, it wasn't the Highline so much, but Little Island took so much energy, and it took, I don't know, what's now about $300 million of our family's philanthropy.
And from what I understand, after the maintenance fees over time, it's going to be
it'll be more than
million.
that. Yeah. It'll be a lot. But it started out at a considerable amount. So after we built that, I kind of, for a couple of years, was fallow with, I thought, okay, I've done that. We did a few other things. We've constantly doing different forms of philanthropy, but nothing of like building project by project. And I'm just now beginning I want to fill the larder back up. And so I'm just at the beginning of that process.
And what's on your
I have nothing.
But you're at the stage where you're ideating.
I'm definitely.
And lastly, and I'd imagine we're going to end where we started, what makes you happy?
Oh. What makes me happy? I don't know. So the thing is, so many things right now. There's nothing that makes me unhappy. It would be a crime for me to be unhappy. I'm so fortunate. I've been so lucky. I mean, eventually luck ends, but I mean, I have been, and as my wife's mother said, they can't take away from you what you've already had. And I've had so much. How could I do anything but be grateful and say thank you? And that, to be not happy, would be sinful.
2 hours, 2 minutes, 51 seconds. I know it's, having you sit here for this long takes a lot. I appreciate you making the time, and I'm glad we could do it. It's a long time coming.
Thank you.